Chaos Walking, science fiction film starring Tom Holland, Daisy Ridley, Mads Mikkelsen and David Oyelowo, adapted from a successful novel, or a series of novels. It's had a really awkward release history because the film was originally made all the way back in 2017, 4 years ago, and scheduled to release in 2019 initially, but then the studio ordered extensive reshoots. Apparently the test screenings showed that the movie was not good at the time. So then as they redid parts of the film, the pandemic hit, so it was delayed again and again, and eventually just quietly removed from the theatrical release altogether and put on Amazon Prime earlier this year. I haven't really seen anybody talking about this film, which is weird because it has all the makings of the next summer blockbuster, right? Popular actors, based on an already successful book, interesting premise, but somehow it manages to go wrong anyway and ends up being massively disappointing. The story takes place in the far future. Tom Holland is the youngest guy in a human colony on another planet. There's only men in it. We quickly learned that there was a war some years ago with the native species, in which those native species massacred all the women. And that's not all. The planet has an effect on people which makes them essentially broadcast their thoughts, manifest them. Other people can hear those thoughts and also see them in the form of this like colorful mist above the head. And occasionally, when the thoughts are strong enough, they're also projecting images. It's all called the noise. Some people control themselves better and manage to keep their thoughts secret, while others are more open books. Things change when a scout ship from a new wave of colonists crashes into the forest, and the sole survivor is Daisy Ridley, a girl, which immediately stirs things in the village, even more so because she is unaffected by the noise. Nobody knows really what she's thinking. And of course she will eventually team up with Tom Holland to go on an adventure together, but that's the version without spoilers. So the concept is pretty interesting, and I really like the way that the noise is shown as this visual effect and as voiceovers heard by other characters. I think the execution on that is pretty solid. It also introduces this unusual dynamic where Holland's character can't really hide anything from Daisy. It's a bit like this teenage hormonal storm on steroids. However, the longer the film goes on, beyond the first 20 minutes or so, the weaker it becomes. First of all, it's unbelievably pedestrian in the way it looks, apart from the noise effect. For an alien planet, the setting looks really bland. It's just a normal looking forest all the time. There's almost no effort made to kind of differentiate the various stages of the character's journey, the various chapters of the film. All locations look very similar in an uninteresting way. And this goes beyond that as well, as the movie has really terrible world building. What I tend to like about science fiction is attention to detail in terms of clothes, locations, equipment that people use. Like, you can see when the filmmakers actually ask themselves the questions, okay, what could these people be using? What would this equipment look like? What would it be made of? Which materials? So that it makes sense within the created world. Chaos Walking is devoid of that. Some elements of it are just generic sci-fi, like the ridiculous, colorful, futuristic guns. Others look like modern-day Europe, the furniture inside houses, the farming equipment, the buildings. And other things are weirdly anachronistic, like taken from a Western. Horses and old-timey rifles. I mean, there's literally a scene where some characters shoot futuristic guns and others, like on the same team, shoot some old-ass shotguns. And I just struggled to think of an explanation why those two would exist side by side. Just pick one maybe, otherwise it just becomes terribly inconsistent. Story-wise, the whole thing is a mess. I don't know how much of that is the fault of the reshoots, but it's all just stupid and incoherent, and the more information is revealed about the plot, the less it makes sense, until eventually the whole setup just falls apart. The motivations of the different characters and groups of characters are incomprehensible. There's no explanation for why they act in certain ways and not others. It all just feels very, very paper thin. The worst element of that being probably the villain of the film, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is utterly and completely wasted. Feels like he has no depth as a character, and even though there is a hint of an interesting backstory, we never learn anything substantial about it. In general, it just feels like a bland, boring, poorly made attempt at addressing a teenage drama into sci-fi clothes, which fails miserably despite an interesting premise and a solid cast. There is a reason that the film was largely unheard of. Stay away from it.